Hi, I'm Jolene Bardot, and my family told me I'd never amount to anything. They laughed when I said I wanted to work in military innovation. They hid my awards, erased my name from photos, and even listed my sister as the owner of the house I paid to rebuild. Then, one day, I found out my father was taking credit for my work on a national stage. But what stung more than that was the email I wasn't supposed to see. My mother wrote, "Things would be easier if Jolene just disappeared." So why did the president call me the mind that changed national security forever? What exactly did they try to erase before the whole country found out? Dinner at the Bardot household always looked like a cover photo from a magazine. Polished silverware, a curated wine list from Dad's latest trip to Napa, and an invisible seating hierarchy you only noticed when you didn't quite belong. That night, the table was longer than usual to accommodate my father's colleagues from the university. The air buzzed with polite competitiveness, whose child had published a paper, which firm had offered a better package. It was the kind of gathering where everyone smiled too tightly and bragged just subtly enough to pass as humility. I sat near the far end, 2 seats away from the main conversational flow. The "you're here because you're family, not because you're interesting" zone. I didn't mind it as much anymore. You learn how to breathe in rooms where no one's looking for your voice. When the topic shifted to the future, everyone knew it was my turn. I felt Seraphine's glance flick toward me. Not maternal, just managerial. Callista, my older sister, already had the floor, charming everyone with her firm's latest merger. When the attention pivoted toward me, I cleared my throat. "I've been exploring an application to a federal AI defense program," I said, as casually as one could utter something like that. "They're looking for technical innovation in real-time threat assessments." Callista laughed first. It wasn't loud or cruel. It was the kind of laugh people let out when they think you're joking, but haven't caught the punchline yet. "Jolene thinks she's gonna change the world," she said, waving her wine glass. "Isn't that adorable?" Aunt Valerie leaned in, smiling wide. "Stick to something stable, sweetie, like decorating. You've always had an eye for aesthetics." I nodded like I agreed, letting my smile do the work of making their dismissal seem okay. I didn't trust my voice not to crack. "That's fair," I murmured, and turned back to the mashed potatoes I hadn't touched. The rest of the table moved on without me. Dad discussed China's economic models with his dean friend. Mom refilled Callista's glass. I existed in the margins. Again. Later that night, while everyone migrated to the sunroom for digestifs and political banter, I stayed behind to help in the kitchen. It was easier to rinse dishes than rinse off the sting of being mocked by your own blood. Wendell entered with a half-empty Bordeaux in hand. I could tell from the way he leaned against the counter that he'd already decided what he was going to say. "You're not built for it, Jolene," he said, not even looking at me. "All this tech nonsense. You'll never amount to anything." My hands stopped in the soapy water. I looked up, hoping maybe, just maybe, he didn't mean it the way it sounded. But he did. "That's not pessimism," he added. "It's my professional opinion." I wanted to respond, something sharp, something dignified, but the words got stuck behind my teeth like they always did. Instead, I wiped my hands, walked past him, and climbed the stairs without another word. In my childhood room, I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling 13 again. The framed participant certificates still hung above my desk. My parents never replaced them with anything I actually accomplished. I stared at the ceiling, willing myself not to cry. You start replaying moments like that in your head, wondering when exactly they stopped believing in you, or if they ever did. Back then, I wanted to be a robotics engineer, then a cryptographer, then a systems analyst for national security. Every time I brought up something new, it became a dinner anecdote. Jolene's trying her hand at something techie again, like I was dabbling in hobbies, not designing algorithms that could save lives. That night, I opened my laptop. The screen glowed against the dim room, casting a soft light on old dreams I hadn't given up on, just hidden. I typed Department of Defense AI Innovation Internship into the search bar. The application deadline was 3 weeks away. Required: portfolio, project brief, 2 references. No one in my family would offer a letter, and I didn't want one from them anyway. Maybe I wouldn't win their applause, but maybe I didn't need it. I downloaded the forms, started outlining my proposal: real-time threat detection using multi-layered behavioral data. I worked in silence, letting each click of the keyboard drown out their laughter from earlier. I was done waiting for permission to matter. He didn't even look up from his glass when he said it, but that sentence built the fire in me. The morning light spilled through my apartment window like it always did, just enough to make you think the day might be kind. I was sipping lukewarm coffee at my kitchen counter when I made the mistake of opening Instagram. I didn't scroll much, but for some reason, that day I did. That's when I saw it. A wide-angle shot of my family. Perfect posture, champagne glasses mid-toast, linen outfits color-coordinated like some magazine spread. The caption read, "Bardot Legacy. So proud of our family values." I stared at it for longer than I should have. The photo was from the post-brunch event last week, at Callista's house. I remembered where I'd been standing, far right, behind a flower arrangement, smiling politely, though no one had invited me into the main cluster. But here, in this perfect post, my spot was simply gone. Cropped clean, no trace. They'd literally edited me out. "You ever be so present in a room and still feel invisible?" I whispered, more to the mug in my hand than anything else. I clicked on the comments. Professors, old neighbors, colleagues of my father, all fawning over the elegant unity of the Bardots. I didn't see one mention of my name, not a single tag. I closed the app and set my phone down, face down, as if it could silence the sting. But the truth doesn't come from a screen. It comes from what you already knew in your bones. Later that afternoon, I had to stop by the family house to drop off some signed documents for a property title transfer. I didn't want to go, but there are things you still handle, even after they've erased you from the frame. The house hadn't changed. It never did. Everything pristine, preserved in this curated version of success. I let myself in. Still had the old key. On the kitchen island was a stack of junk mail and unopened envelopes. That's when I saw it. The White House seal. I froze. The envelope, thick and gold-trimmed, was wedged between a grocery circular and an alumni donation request. It had been torn, not violently, but with disinterest. Its corner curled up, like it had been dropped or stepped on. My name was printed on it. Full name: Sergeant Jolene Elise Bardot. Before I could say anything, Seraphine entered from the hallway, carrying a scented candle and a half-filled glass of cucumber water. She saw me holding the envelope. "Oh, that?" she said, her voice so light it might have floated. "Looked like another one of those alumni mailers. You're still on so many lists." She walked past me without waiting for a response, placing the candle by the sink. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. I slid the envelope into my bag and nodded once, to no one in particular. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't about misunderstanding. This wasn't about being forgotten. It was about being omitted. I left the house and drove straight back to my apartment. The traffic on Wisconsin Avenue crawled, but I didn't mind. I needed the stillness. At the next red light, I whispered to myself, "When people dismiss your worth, it's never about you. It's about the threat you pose to the fiction they've built." Back home, I laid the envelope on my kitchen table and gently peeled it open. Inside was a formal invitation, an award recognition at the White House for military innovation. My name, my rank, my work. I stared at the seal again, running my fingers along the embossment. My hands trembled, but not from doubt, from fury, from the weight of years of being told I was decoration while carrying substance no one bothered to see. I reprinted the invitation at work the next day. I laminated it and slid it into a black folder. I booked a seamstress to adjust my uniform and pulled my boots from the back of the closet, wiping away the dust. I also sent an email to Dr. Alaric Dorn, my old computer science professor, and the only person who'd ever written me a letter of recommendation without being asked twice. He replied within the hour, "Of course I'll attend. You're finally where you belong." That evening, I stood in my bedroom, looking at myself in the mirror, dress uniform halfway buttoned. It felt like armor, not to fight them, but to remind myself that I'd survived everything they pretended never happened. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began to write. Not to them, not for them, for me. If they won't keep a photo with me in it, I'll write a story they can't crop me out of. I don't know what triggered the memory. The rustle of paper, maybe? Or the sharp edge of silence after something beautiful is dismissed too quickly. I was looking at the White House RSVP in my hand when it came back in a rush. Not just the moment, but the taste in my mouth, the pause in my chest, the way the light hit the old kitchen tiles the day it happened. I was 17, senior year. The envelope had been thick, the paper stiff and bright white. A gold seal from the Maryland State Science Initiative gleamed in the corner. I remember my fingers shaking as I tore it open, rereading the line about my robotics project taking second in state, the partial scholarship offer, the invitation to a ceremony at Johns Hopkins. I ran downstairs, breathless, letter in hand. They were in the dining room, my father with a copy of The Economist folded open beside his untouched eggs, my mother scrolling through her emails, Callista on the phone, pacing with her heels clicking sharp against the hardwood. I held the letter like it was burning in my palm. "Dad, look, I placed in the state finals. They're offering." Wendell took the paper without looking up. He read the first 3 lines, blinked, then slowly, without comment, tore it directly down the center. The sound of the rip was louder than anything I'd ever heard in that house. He dropped the pieces in the trash beside the table. "You think some robotics fair ribbon changes your trajectory?" he said, almost bored. "That's not how this family defines success." No one else said anything. My mother didn't look up. Callista didn't pause her call. The air in the room stayed still, while something inside me snapped loose and fell in on itself. It wasn't just the paper that was torn that day. It was the belief that effort equaled recognition, that doing something worth doing would be enough. 3 weeks later, I was preparing my submission for the National Applied STEM competition. It was open to minors, but required parental consent. Just a signature. One name on a line. I sat at the kitchen table with the form. "I just need this signed," I said. "I've already done the project. I'll handle the travel myself." My mother sighed, as though I'd asked her to finance a yacht. "Jolene, you're setting yourself up to be humiliated on a national stage. We're protecting you from that." I turned to my father. He didn't even look at the paper. "No." Callista came down the stairs in workout clothes, sipping from a protein shake. She saw the tension, gave a soft smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You can still do something great," she said lightly. "Just within your limits. Within your limits." That night, I sat alone in the garage. My project was on the workbench, sensors blinking softly, the solder still warm on the last circuit I'd wired. I signed my parents' names. Not sloppily, not with bitterness. Just like a girl who'd realized she'd have to write her own permission slips for the rest of her life. "If their belief in me has limits," I whispered, "maybe I need to stop living inside them." I mailed the form the next morning. No one asked about it. No one noticed. What they couldn't see in me, I started building anyway. I collected discarded desktops from the recycling bin at school, pulled apart laptops that classmates threw out. I learned how wires carried intent. That failure wasn't loud like disappointment. It was silent and fixable. Every time someone left the room when I spoke, I studied harder. Every dinner where Callista's voice drowned mine out, I spent in the garage, building something that might outlast the echo of their laughter. Sometimes the best revenge isn't moving on. I wrote in my old notebook. It's building something they can't destroy. Now, years later, I sit with the same sense of purpose. Only this time, the paper in front of me bears the seal of the United States government. And this envelope, I didn't have to forge anything to receive. I click Send on my RSVP to the White House. And as I do, I think of the girl who signed her own application and dropped it in a mailbox while her family slept. The girl who forged a signature at 18 is the woman who now gets invitations with seals of state. The brunch invitation came in the same overdecorated font Callista used for everything. Overdone cursive that looked expensive, just for the sake of being expensive. Post-wedding brunch celebration, it read. Location: the Alden Room, Georgetown. Guest list: family, friends, and distinguished colleagues. Translation: people who mattered to them, and a few who were allowed to watch. I almost didn't go. Part of me knew better. But some old, rusted part inside still wanted to be seen, to be asked, to be acknowledged even slightly. So I put on a tailored navy dress and flats I hadn't worn since the last ceremony they barely invited me to. I straightened my shoulders. I walked in like I belonged. The venue was beautiful. High ceilings, glass chandeliers that caught morning light like diamonds. A live string trio played near the back, just loud enough to elevate the air without intruding on it. I paused at the entrance, scanning the room for the seating chart. There wasn't a card with my name on it. "Excuse me." A young woman in black slacks and a crisp white blouse approached me. "Are you here to help with beverage service?" I blinked. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard. Before I could answer, Callista appeared behind me, gliding in a pearl-toned wrap dress, her hair done up like an editorial spread. "She's family," she said breezily, not even looking at me. "Extended, in a way. Can we get another mimosa for table 3? I stood there, trying to process what I'd just heard. Extended, in a way. The server apologized and rushed off. I found an empty chair near the restroom, behind a large potted plant, and sat down. From that vantage point, I watched them, the real Bardots, as they saw it, toasting with their signature legacy cocktails, laughing at anecdotes where Callista always played the hero, or Seraphine the tireless matriarch. It hit me then that I wasn't invisible by accident. I had been quietly edited out, again. I needed air. I slipped outside to the small courtyard, where the noise faded just enough to think. That's when I heard a voice behind me. "Jolene! Jolene Bardot?" I turned. Vanessa Locke, high school debate team. Now she was working in policy research at a think tank, if I remembered right. "Wow," she said. "It's been forever. I heard you moved back in with your folks, and we're still kind of figuring things out?" I blinked. "I live in Arlington. I run a classified AI integration lab for the Department of Defense." She looked genuinely confused. "Really? Your mom told us at the alumni gala that you'd taken a step back, trying to find direction." Of course she had. I smiled tightly. "Well, sometimes the truth isn't as comforting as the version they'd prefer." Vanessa flushed. "Sorry, guess I shouldn't assume." "No harm," I said. But inside, something cracked. It wasn't just that Seraphine lied. It was that she had been doing it long enough, publicly enough, that people had built a narrative around it. I returned to the table a few minutes later, sat through the speeches, listened as every mention of legacy and achievement rotated around Callista like she was the sun and we were the debris. They didn't say my name, not once. I pulled out my phone and typed one word into my notes app: record. That night, back home, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my apartment. In front of me was a printed copy of my White House acceptance letter. Above it, my laptop camera stared back at me. I hit record. "My name is Jolene Bardot," I began. "I've been erased quietly, efficiently, and without ceremony. So I'm going to build the record myself. If they won't give me a legacy, I'll build one they can't erase." The box was small, but it carried weight. Inside it was my newest prototype, an encrypted AI defense module, built from 2 years' worth of midnight coding, failed iterations, and caffeine-fueled persistence. I'd padded it carefully, enclosed a short note in my neatest handwriting. "Thought you'd like to see what I've been working on. Love, Jolene. I didn't add your daughter because that hadn't felt true for a while. I sent it to the Bardot house on a Thursday. I wasn't expecting confetti or a press release, but maybe, someone would finally look at my work and say, "We're proud of you," or even just, "This is impressive." By Sunday, the package was back on my doorstep. The cardboard had been retaped hastily. The same note I had written was still inside, folded once more but untouched. A post-it had been slapped onto the top of the module itself. Just 6 words, scrawled in handwriting I recognized from grocery lists and holiday cards. "Don't send garbage to our house." My mother had written it. I stood in my apartment doorway, box in my hands, the wind outside sharper than usual. Across the street, a couple walked their dog, chatting softly. The world kept moving, indifferent. But inside me, something rooted itself deeper, stronger. I carried the box in, placed it carefully on the top shelf of my office, and labeled it with a Sharpie, "Fuel." That Monday, while reviewing logistics for the White House Gala, I got an email from the event coordinator confirming my formal invitation had been received. They were finalizing printed programs and table cards, she said. I thanked her, double-checked the spelling, and froze. Jolene Bardot. Not just a typo, an entire person I didn't recognize. I called the number listed in the footer. A young woman answered cheerfully. "White House Recognition Program. This is Emily." "Hi, this is Jolene Bardot. I think there's been a mistake in the print version of my name for the gala." There was a pause. "Oh, yes. Let me see. It looks like this was submitted by a third party, Callista Bardot's firm?" My throat went dry. "Could you send me the form they submitted?" She did. I opened it. There it was. Under Honoree. Jolene Bardot, AI Assistant Developer. Assistant Developer. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I remembered what Callista had told me once at a family dinner, after I made a comment about job titles and hierarchy. You have to build credibility before you're allowed a nameplate. Back then, I thought she meant it metaphorically. I called Emily back. This time, my voice was firm. I laid out the facts. I explained that no one had been authorized to submit on my behalf, that the name was incorrect, that the role was misrepresented. I sent documentation, ID scans, and even a scanned letter from the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense. She was apologetic, professional, and quick to fix it. After the call, I stared at the corrected document, now bearing my full name, correct title, and credentials. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was clear. This wasn't about being included. It was about never again letting them edit me out, whether through silence or reworded forms. I went back to my desk, opened the event press kit template, and began writing a statement under my real name. Sergeant Jolene Bardot, AI Defense Innovator, to be honored at White House Gala recognizing contributions to national security infrastructure. I typed slowly, carefully. I attached my photo. I double-checked every line. Then I remembered something Eleanor Roosevelt had once said. "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." I clicked Submit. And I smiled. Not because I'd proven them wrong, but because I was finally done asking them to be right. I wasn't just attending the gala. I was walking in as a headline they didn't write. It started with a knock. Not the kind that echoed ominously, just the soft, everyday thud of a delivery at my door. I didn't even rush to answer it. I was in the middle of updating specs on a test model and didn't want to lose my train of thought. But when I opened the door and saw the envelope on the ground, something in me already braced. It was from the property office. The deed confirmation packet for the renovation I'd poured every spare dollar and hour into. My grandfather's old cabin, the one tucked behind the Bardot estate in Bethesda, where I'd spent entire summers as a girl sketching designs on napkins and dreaming of escape. I tore the envelope open and flipped through the file. Everything looked right, until I saw the name. Property owner Callista Bardot. I blinked. Thought maybe it was a clerical mistake. Maybe a form got mixed. I checked the parcel number, the lot ID, even the filing code. All correct. Except my name wasn't on any of it. I called the office. The woman on the line confirmed the worst. Yes, the title was transferred 3 months ago at the request of Wendell and Seraphine Bardot. Your sister filed the notarized documents on their behalf. I hung up before my voice could shake. An hour later, I was in their garage. The same one I used to sneak into to fix old radios and salvage busted toasters. The prototype box I'd sent them, the one my mother had returned with a posted insult, still sat near the water heater, untouched. Like a piece of clutter they couldn't decide if they should toss or ignore. Seraphine was in the kitchen, arranging peonies into a vase that already looked too full. I need to talk to you, I said. She didn't look up. If it's about that cabin, your father's already explained. No, he didn't. I cut in. No one explained a thing. You transferred the title. You put it in Callista's name without telling me. She sighed, like she was being asked to repeat herself at a dinner party. It's just paperwork, Joe. You weren't even using your legal trust account. Honestly, we thought it was cleaner this way. Cleaner for who? I asked. Because I was using that space. I funded the remodel with my own savings. My name was on every contractor invoice. Then you should have been more involved in the ownership discussion, she said, finally making eye contact. We assumed you weren't serious. I looked at her, the woman who raised me, who used to kiss my scraped knees and braid my hair for first day of school pictures, and I felt absolutely nothing. That night, I went home to Arlington and sat at my desk, trying to focus on final prep for the White House event. My email pinged, an alert from the Defense Innovation Board. Thank you for your inquiry. Unfortunately, we never received your final submission packet. The deadline has passed. I froze. Weeks earlier, Callista had offered to mail it for me. I was swamped with testing simulations, and she had a courier account through her firm. Just let me handle it, she'd said with that glossy PR smile. You have enough on your plate. I checked my records. The PDF was dated and saved. I had printed it, signed it, packaged it, handed it directly to her. I drove to her office the next morning, under the pretense of picking up a phone charger I'd left behind. Her assistant wasn't at the desk, and the door was cracked open. I stepped inside. There, in a pile of untouched envelopes, was mine. Still sealed, still stamped. I picked it up, turned it over slowly, and took a photo with my phone. My chest was quiet, not panicked, not even angry, just resolved. Callista walked in just as I turned to leave. Oh, hey, she said, blinking. Did you find it? I held the envelope up. Oh, that. Her voice didn't shift. You never confirmed you wanted me to send it. I didn't want to assume. You always assume, I said. You just assume I won't fight back. She tilted her head like I was overreacting. Joe, it's just a delay. No, I said. It's a pattern. That night, in my car outside a quiet strip of office buildings, I tore open the envelope, scanned the documents, and emailed them directly to the board with a detailed note explaining the circumstances. Then I picked up my phone and called a real estate attorney. I need to file a legal challenge on a deed transfer, I told him. And I want every email record preserved, everyone. If I couldn't stop them from taking things silently, I'd make sure they answered loudly. 5 days before the ceremony, I made the mistake of telling them. We were all at the house. Callista had dropped by to show off her latest media coverage, and Seraphine was rearranging books on the coffee table like guests were arriving any minute. Wendell sat in his usual chair near the fireplace, flipping through Foreign Affairs as if he hadn't read it 3 times already. I stood with my invitation in hand, the official gold-embossed seal glinting under the ceiling lights. I got the final confirmation, I said, holding it out like proof. I'll be receiving the Distinguished Service Medal at the White House on Monday. Wendell didn't look up. He just sipped his wine, then finally said, Well, don't embarrass the family. Just smile, shake hands, don't act like a hero. Seraphine didn't respond at all. She reached for a coaster. Callista arched a brow, folded her arms and smirked. Try not to cry on camera, okay? Makes it awkward for the rest of us. I tucked the invitation back into its envelope. My voice didn't rise. I didn't blink. Thanks for the media coaching, I said evenly. I'll try to look less betrayed. No one replied. I glanced toward the mantel above the fireplace. It overflowed with Callista's law degrees, framed features from business magazines, and plaques from panels she barely spoke at. There was no space left for me. Maybe there never had been. The next day, I was in my office when a colleague sent me a link. Hey, saw your dad on this panel. Thought it was cool he mentioned AI work, didn't know he was involved. I clicked. It was a keynote at the National Economic Leadership Conference. Wendell stood at the podium in a three-piece suit, gesturing as if painting theory in midair. And of course, recent collaborative AI defense breakthroughs in the family have positioned us for significant cross-sectoral impact, he said, with that signature pause, letting the applause rise behind his words. He never said my name, not once. I stared at the screen. My jaw clenched so tightly, I could feel the muscles ache behind my ears. Collaborative breakthroughs in the family. What collaboration? What defense? That was my work. Hours of classified testing, years of training, systems I'd developed under military security. And now, here he was, basking in applause under chandeliers while I waited on authorization badges and prayed for secure bandwidth on active testing servers. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I opened my files. I gathered documents, design blueprints, timestamps, access logs, emails with senior officers, every piece of evidence that tied the work directly to me. Then I contacted the conference board and filed a formal complaint for unauthorized representation of federally classified intellectual property. They said they'd investigate internally. I didn't wait for them to care. If you're not at the table, I whispered, closing my laptop, you're probably on the menu. Later that night, I opened a new folder on my secure cloud. Legacy files. I uploaded it all. The evidence, the recordings, the photos, the receipts, literal and metaphorical. Everything they'd tried to take, twist, claim, or ignore. I made copies. I encrypted them. I backed them up again. They had erased me from dinner tables and applauded themselves with the scraps. They'd written me out in public and claimed me in private. I would make sure they couldn't do both. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I turned on the webcam, adjusted the angle, and hit record. My name is Jolene Bardot. This isn't about revenge. It's about the memory of what really happened. Before they rewrite me again. Before they rewrite me again, I'll leave proof they never expected to be seen. The uniform always fit better on the days I needed it to. Not because the fabric changed, but because I did. That morning, I stood in front of my mirror in Arlington, tying my hair back tighter than usual. Each loop of the braid felt like threading armor into place. The mirror caught the glint of the metal pin waiting on the dresser beside me. I was halfway through adjusting my collar when my phone buzzed. An anonymous message, the kind that didn't show a sender, just a block of gray text. Don't embarrass yourself or your family. Don't step on that stage. No punctuation, no explanation. I stared at it for a second too long, then turned back to the mirror. My hands didn't shake. They moved with a certainty I hadn't always known I had. I printed the message, folded it slowly, and sealed it in an envelope I slipped into my bag. Then I picked up that metal pin, fastened it to my chest, and whispered to my reflection. I've held things together longer than any of them ever knew. 2 hours later, the East Room of the White House buzzed with a different kind of tension. Prestige. Rows of uniformed men and women, formal wear, applause lines, flashes of cameras. But under it all, a quiet reverence. There was a sense that something mattered here. My name was fifth on the list. I stood in the wings as each citation was read. The audience rose and clapped for a pilot who pulled his team from a downed aircraft in Kandahar, a diplomat who negotiated a hostage release, a tech advisor who intercepted a critical cyber threat. Then they read mine. Sergeant Jolene Bardot, recognized for pioneering innovations in real-time behavioral intelligence integration, contributing directly to the prevention of 5 coordinated attacks on domestic infrastructure. I stepped forward. The room stood, rows and rows of strangers, officers, senators, scientists, aides, survivors. Their hands thundered together. I looked out across the sea of movement and found one pocket of stillness. Wendell and Seraphine didn't stand. Seraphine sat with her ankles crossed and arms folded neatly. Wendell looked down at his lap, disinterested. And Callista. She was scrolling through her phone. Everyone stood. Everyone. Except the people who should have leapt up first. I didn't stop walking. I didn't falter. The president extended his hand, warm and steady. In every generation, he said into the microphone, there are quiet warriors. Today, we honor one who redefined how we defend not just our country, but truth. I didn't cry. I accepted the medal, smiled for the camera, let the applause roll over me, not as approval, but as correction, as restoration. You didn't have to cheer. I brought my own applause. As the ceremony wrapped, a Secret Service agent stepped close. I handed him the sealed envelope without a word. He glanced at it, nodded once, and disappeared. I exited the stage and made my way toward the reception area. The air was thicker there, buzzier, more casual. I caught snippets of conversation about policy, progress, pride. Then I felt eyes on me. I turned toward the VIP section. Callista was there, finally looking up. Her expression wasn't proud. It wasn't angry. It was wary. I walked past her, didn't break stride. As I passed, I said softly, so only she could hear, I know exactly who's afraid of me speaking. Her face didn't change, but her phone dropped a little lower in her hand. I didn't just walk off that stage. I walked into a different kind of spotlight, and this time, they couldn't dim it. The reception spilled into the East Room with a hum of clinking glasses and polished small talk. I moved through the crowd like someone walking through water, aware of every movement, every glance, but untouched by any of it. I was still in uniform. The medal rested just above my heart, and somehow it felt both heavier and lighter than I expected. The president found me near the windows, where sunlight fell across the parquet floor in soft slats. He didn't make a show of it. No cameras, no advisors, just him and me. We don't always get to pick who claps for us, he said, lowering his voice, but you've earned every one of them. He squeezed my shoulder once and stepped onto the small riser at the front of the room. When he tapped the microphone, the chatter settled instantly. I'd like to say one more thing, he began. In every room like this, we have stories. Stories of triumph, of endurance, of brilliance often left unrecognized. But not today. Today, we honor someone whose work saved lives. She didn't just serve her country, she rewrote the way we understand service. He turned to look at me. Sergeant Jolene Bardot. Applause followed, swelling and genuine. It wasn't polite, it wasn't dutiful, it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I let it in. That night, in my hotel room, just blocks from the White House, I took off the uniform slowly. The medal came off last. I placed it next to my laptop, next to a flash drive labeled in my handwriting. Proof they erased me. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through emails, half listening to the news playing low on the TV. That's when I saw it. A text from Dr. Raymond Lott, a former colleague from my early contractor days. Thought you should see this, it read. Attached was a blurry photo taken at a recent global tech forum in Geneva. It was a slide projected during a panel, my slide. The defense model I'd co-developed. The title of the project was there, the citations were there, but my name wasn't. I stared at it, lips pressed tight. I pulled up the original presentation, my copy, my timestamps, my name clearly at the top. 10 minutes later, I was neck-deep in metadata. It didn't take long. The presentation had been submitted by a representative from Callista's firm. Same logo, same branding. Same sanitized summary of the project that neatly left out my name, my work, my life. The next morning, I sent an email to the host organization, attached the original contract, the original slides, the documentation logs from our work sessions. Then I requested a formal correction. Not an apology, just the truth. They responded faster than I expected. That afternoon, they posted a retraction on their homepage and announced a special recognition slide would be added to the forum recap event. My name would be featured, my contributions noted, publicly, permanently. I didn't tell anyone in my family. I didn't have to. They had tried to delete my name where no one would notice, but it showed up where no one could ignore. Back in the hotel room, I sat again on the bed. The city outside buzzed faintly. I opened my notes app, typed a single line. They built a legacy by silence. I answered with volume. As I reached to plug in my phone, another notification popped up. An email from a journalist I didn't recognize. Subject: the genius who was almost erased. Her message was brief. I'd like to tell your story. The real one. On your terms. I stared at the screen for a long moment. I didn't seek the spotlight, but now that I'm in it, I'll make sure the truth is never dimmed again. 2 days after the ceremony, I sat on my living room floor in Arlington, still half in uniform, hair only loosely untied from the braid I'd worn on stage. The medal sat on the coffee table, reflecting the morning light. I hadn't put it away. I wasn't ready to move on from what it meant, not just to me, but to the story I was finally allowing the world to hear. The television was on low in the background. I wasn't watching, not really, until the president's voice filled the room. In every corner of this country, we owe our safety to minds like Sergeant Jolene Bardot, minds forged not in applause, but in rejection. Her brilliance wasn't cultivated at the top of a ladder. It was built from the ground up, through silence, resistance, and yes, resilience. I froze. He was speaking from the press hall, delivering his weekly national address. The feed showed my image, me sitting a row behind the podium days earlier, uniform crisp, eyes forward. This time, the caption read my name. Correct spelling, correct title, no asterisks, no omissions. I didn't cry. I wasn't overcome. I just sat there, allowing the sound of truth, spoken aloud, broadcast to a nation, to wash over the years I'd spent being erased. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. It wasn't a number I recognized, but something told me to answer. Jolene Bardot? The voice asked. Warm, direct. This is Caitlin Moore. I'm a journalist with The Ledger. I've been following your work since the DoD submission reviews last year. I stood up, took the call to the kitchen, where it was quieter. I wanted to ask, Caitlin continued, would you be willing to speak to me on the record? Your name's been missing from so many bios, so many articles, but never from the results. I want to tell that story. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. You can tell it, I said, but only if you include everything they left out. She didn't hesitate. Absolutely. That's the story I'm after. There was a pause on my end. Then I added, more for myself than her. History's usually written by the loudest voice, but maybe it's time the truth got a microphone. The next morning, I woke to the buzz of my phone lighting up with notifications, texts, mentions, headlines. The genius who was almost erased. How silence failed to hold her back. Sergeant Bardot's story reminds us who we never see. I scrolled past them, numb. Then I paused on a thread, already thousands of comments deep. People sharing their own stories of being overlooked, passed over, edited out. Names misspelled. Photos cropped. Work credited to others. I read every word. It wasn't just my story anymore. The backlash came just as quickly. Anonymous forums lit up. Whispers of daddy issues, fabricated trauma. She just wants attention. Someone posted an old family photo from Callista's wedding, highlighting my absence in the caption. Maybe there's a reason they left her out. Callista's law firm released a statement before noon. We support all forms of family success and are proud of the professional accomplishments within the Bardot lineage. It said nothing. It admitted nothing. That night, I sat with my laptop open and the medal on my desk beside me. I didn't feel vindictive. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt finished, with hiding, with asking, with making room where I'd been pushed out. I didn't destroy their legacy, I whispered to myself. I just stopped hiding under it. Just before midnight, a new email slid into my inbox. Subject: About your father's submission. You need to see this. The body was brief. You don't know me, but I read your story. I have something you need to see. It's about what your father really submitted last spring. I thought the worst was over, but maybe I hadn't seen the full betrayal yet. A week after the story broke, I received a forwarded thread from a software architect I'd worked with years ago. No subject line, no body text, just a long string of emails originally sent between Seraphine and a woman on the board of a university alumni committee. Most of it was typical Bardot Polish, mentions of family philanthropy, of Callista's latest recognition in some legal journal. Then, a paragraph buried mid-scroll, with a sentence so sharp I had to read it twice to believe it was real. Sometimes I think if Jolene had just disappeared, this whole family would be less tense. No emoji, no caveat, just that. She never said anything like that to my face. That's how I knew it was real. I didn't respond to the email. There was nothing to say. I didn't cry, didn't throw my phone. I sat in the quiet and let the sentence do what it came to do. 2 days later, Wendell called. His voice was uncharacteristically gentle. Your mother and we'd like to talk, if you have time. I told him I'd drive out that afternoon. The Bardot home looked the same, every object curated, nothing accidental. The porch flowers were fresh. The brass doorknob gleamed. Inside, Seraphine poured tea like we were catching up after a successful fundraiser. Wendell sat across from me, legs crossed, sweater tied around his shoulders, like some caricature of a man who read too much and felt too little. We've been reflecting, he began, voice measured. There's been misunderstanding, emotionally driven narratives. Seraphine offered a smile, like it was part of her skincare routine. We never meant to diminish your accomplishments, Joe. We were trying to protect the family image. I set the newspaper down on the coffee table, the one with my face on the cover. The headline, The Genius Who Was Almost Erased. Neither of them reached for it. I didn't raise my voice. What you protected wasn't a family, I said. It was a version of it without me in it. No one spoke after that. The silence filled the room like fog, thick and inescapable. I excused myself and walked upstairs, toward the room that used to be mine. The door still had a brass nameplate, Jolene, etched into it. Inside, the walls were bare, shelves stripped. The space looked like it had been staged for someone else. Maybe that's what I was all along, someone passing through a family they were never quite allowed to belong to. I sat on the edge of the bed, reached into my bag, and pulled out a small flash drive. I'd labeled it My Version. Inside was everything: photos, project timelines, news articles, voice notes, the pieces of a life they'd refused to acknowledge, now too large to ignore. I left it in the top drawer of the desk, closed it gently. Downstairs, I picked up my coat. Seraphine stood by the door like a receptionist seeing off a client. You're always welcome here, she said. I met her eyes. Don't worry, I said, voice calm. You won't have to protect your image from me anymore. I already gave it to someone else to carry. Then I left. I wasn't walking away from them. I was walking toward myself. 2 weeks passed, and the storm had moved on. But something steadier, something heavier had settled in its place. Not chaos, not silence, just recognition. That morning, a package arrived at my door. No note, just my name on the label and a clean white box inside. I already knew what it was. The custom shadowbox frame was exactly how I'd designed it. Simple, black oak, glass without glare. I set it down on my work table and slowly filled it, piece by piece. The White House medal went first, centered at the top. Below it, a photo of me in uniform, shaking hands with the president. I remembered the exact second the shutter clicked, not because of the camera, but because of the weight of that moment. It had nothing to do with honor. It was the moment I became undeniable. Beside the photo, I placed the handwritten note from the president. Just one sentence. America thanks you for your mind. And then, the final piece. A small, faded photo of Alaric Dorn, my mentor. He was laughing in it, caught mid-word, probably mid-theory. He believed in me long before anyone else admitted I existed. I closed the case and hung it above my desk. I used to beg to be seen. Now, I curate what stays visible. Later that day, I took the metro across town to the National Museum of Women in Technology. A temporary exhibit had just opened. Voices rewritten. My story was part of it. The curator had done it right. A tall digital wall bore my timeline, intercut with quotes, documents, scans of those early designs built from scavenged parts. And at the base, in simple bold type, Sergeant Jolene Bardot, innovator, strategist, survivor. A group of middle school girls in matching charter school uniforms stood in front of the display. One of them pointed. "She's the one they tried to leave out." I stepped back, letting the moment belong to them, letting it be theirs. They erased me from dinner tables. But now, my name is etched in walls built to last longer than their judgments. That night, I returned home, poured tea, and opened my laptop. There was a new message. Seraphine. No greeting, just, "We'd like to talk." No sorry, no proud, just an invitation, an attempt to rebuild something they never truly built to begin with. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed the museum photo, added a sticky note. "You said I was embarrassing. Now I'm unforgettable." The next morning, I walked to the post office and mailed it to the Bardot home. When I returned, I stood in my office, eyes on the frame above my desk. For the first time, the space around it didn't feel too quiet. My family may have written the first chapter, but I signed the ending in my own hand.